they came across this worm business, and it turned out to be a scam. It's a total pyramid scheme. Nightcrawlers are very finicky. They only reproduce in the wild. They take years to reach maturity. The average nightcrawler you fish with is probably 7 years old.
So people need worms,
Yes.
and you're the worm guy.
I had a vision, and I could see where the business could go. We thought there was a plan, but there really wasn't a plan. So it was a little bit, it was hard in the beginning. I was living with my dad at the time too. So when you're in your 20s, you're the smartest guy in the room. You know everything. You don't know anything.
It's interesting as a second generation owner because that's a tough dance. Owners have blind spots, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how do you deal with that? Welcome back, everybody, to the Freedom First Pathway podcast. Matt Derry with you. Another business owner has made his way into our studio as we talk about FFP, but also talk to owners that have gone through a lot of different things, whether it's a first generation and a founder or a second generation owner. And that is exactly who we have today as our guest. Dan Beaudoin is with us from DMF Bait Company in 49 states. People need worms. This is the guy. Dan, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
What's happening, my friend? And have you done other podcasts before? Is this?
This is my first live one. I did a Zoom one once, but I kind of think it really wasn't a real one.
Well, we're
because in the
person.
end, it was a sales pitch.
We are in person. I love it. But as folks know, with Freedom First Pathway, we work with owners like Dan and others, kind of aligning your life, wealth, and business all in one place. We're going to dive into what Dan is all about in the company. I love on the website, Dan, quote, "We move heaven and earthworms to get you the live bait that you need," end quote. Who came up with that?
That's our marketing team.
Okay.
I wish I could say I had that one.
That wasn't you?
No, it wasn't me. Wasn't me.
So you're in a group with Chris Cousins from FFP, and Chris says you have to have Dan on the show. Dan, the worm guy.
The worm guy. Yes.
How did this come about?
We have a unique story. And I wish I could say I was the founder, but I'm not. I had significant growth under my watch, but DMF stands for Dan, Mike, Fred. Dan is my dad. Mike is his twin brother. Fred was a very good friend. Rest in peace. They were school teachers. And back in the 70s, as a school teacher, you didn't get paid in the summer. So they were perpetually looking for additional income. Sided homes, did landscaping, God knows what else. And then 1977, they came across this worm business, which ironically was raising red worms. And it turned out to be a scam. It's a total pyramid scheme. Red worms reach maturity very quick. They're easy to raise. So they put in their life savings to start this business, raised all these worms. And then all of a sudden the company skips town with their money, because they can get their worms pretty easily. And now they're like, so they started trying to peddle them and wasn't too successful because you can't really fish with a red worm. It was like a compost worm. But they discovered, hey, there's a need for nightcrawlers. Fishermen need nightcrawlers. Like, great. Okay, well, we know how to do worms. Let's just get nightcrawlers. Well, nightcrawlers and red worms are completely different. It's like saying, hey, I got a lizard, but I'm going to get a hamster. I raised one animal. What's the difference?
Yeah.
They're completely different. So red worms reproduce very quickly. They need mild temperatures, mild environments. Nightcrawlers are very finicky. They only reproduce in the wild. They take years to reach maturity. Red worms get there in 6 to 9 months. The average nightcrawler you fish with is probably 7 years old. So we need Mother Nature to raise the worms. But in the time, they discovered there was a market for nightcrawlers, and through a lot of stubbornness and old granddad, they pushed through on this company.
That's the drink, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. So people need worms,
Yes.
and you're the worm guy.
Yes.
How does it go from, and I want to get back to the history and your dad and everything else, but how does it go from Michigan and Waterford to 49 states?
So, well, when they first started, they were peddling worms on their trucks. They basically had vans they converted, and they would go to various stores trying to move worms. And then, there was a bigger vision of, one, this is a lot of work. There's got to be a better way. And two, we had, back in the day, you and I will remember, Kmart headquarters was in Troy, right up the road.
Yeah.
And they started calling on Kmart saying, you guys should, and Kmart was ignoring. Finally, one day, they were literally on the verge of carving up the company, and they called one last time, and a guy answered the phone and said, "Yeah, you know what? We've been talking about it. Come on in, let's talk." So Kmart put him in 50 stores, which got him into probably northern Ohio, a little bit of Indiana. I don't really remember the footprint, and it was a headache. And they were told that this will never work. It's not going to happen. You're getting a test. So somehow they got a test in it. And then by the end of the summer, Nightcrawlers were the #1 product sold in the sporting goods department. So as much as these guys were frustrated with them and wanted to get rid of them, they couldn't. And then it came, well, we need to do this in more stores. And then it really went to like, how? So then they started experimenting with shipping worms. And everyone said, you can't do it. Once they've mastered out how to ship it on parcel is when the expansion allowed us to go beyond. Because you can't run a route physically nationwide, especially out of Michigan. It just doesn't work.
Dan Beaudoin with us, DMF Bait Company since 1977. All right, so as a second generation owner, you mentioned your dad, your uncle, and their friend Fred. What's that been like for you?
It's been amazing. It's all I've known my whole life. Ironically, I've had other jobs through high school and in college, but from a career standpoint, I was born and raised in the business. It used to be, when I grew up, it was right down the road, so I'd ride my bike and help out and do little things. And then actually, when I went off to college, business was doing well, but I didn't, as much as I loved it, I didn't know if that's where I wanted to go. So I was actually set out to be a school teacher like my dad. And then after my sophomore year, I got the itch that probably should refocus on business. I started to think maybe I really want to be in the bait business. I want to keep the legacy going. As much as my dad started it, my grandfather was a big part of their success. So my dad's first generation, but his dad helped him. So I moved over into a business administration degree, and then I was lasered focused at coming in. And when I graduated in 97, I didn't take a day off after school. I started full-time the next day.
Transitioning to ownership, I want to ask you about the succession plan, or as you and I discussed off mic, maybe a lack of one. But how did you feel? Were you ready? Did you feel like I'm, as a second generation owner, I don't want to step on toes, but I also feel like I can grow it too?
Looking back, I was young. And of course, you're invincible in your 20s. Yes, I can take on anything. I knew more, but realized when I look back how little I did know. And I had a vision, and I could see where the business could go, but there was some resistance on their part of what we could do. I mean, they wanted to grow it, but they didn't have a lot of plan behind it. And even in our succession, it was kind of when the three of us came in, and there was 3 of them vacating, and myself, Chris, Fred's son, and then Mary, my dad, and Mickey's younger sister were the heir apparent at the time. We really weren't in a position to negotiate anything. So everything was kind of, this is what we're doing, but we really didn't have, we thought there was a plan, but there really wasn't a plan. So it was a little bit, it was hard in the beginning because there was really not this clear understanding of when we take over, when we don't take over, who's doing what. And really the whole financial component of a buyout is a very complex thing. Eventually, through some perseverance, I was able to convince them to let's get some legal counsel instead of using their buddies at the bowling alley. And it was hard because they had their vision of what it should look like. We didn't really have any experience being young, but I've got my buddies that were in financial institutions and kind of giving me some advice with a little bit of knowledge they had fresh out of school of like, what you're describing doesn't sound like a really successful plan. Maybe the plan that they outlined would have worked. I don't know. We did get legal counsel. It was hard. It was stressful. It puts a mammoth strain, because it is family.
Of course.
I was living with my dad at the time too, so I was still living at home. So you can't get away from it. It made it difficult, but I mean, thank God, for all of us, it worked out in the long run.
And, as you know, with FFP, Q5, kind of our exit planning succession process and platform that we use, we hear this all the time. There's just not this owner readiness outfit out there. Now we're helping owners, but that readiness just isn't there, right? And so
Not at all.
Who were you supposed to talk to many years ago?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, like for me, I was stepping into the job. I was still doing my day-to-day portion of the job, and I had my role. But when I look back, and now that I'm looking at, I'm 8 to 10 years away from retirement myself. My dad and uncles didn't have a plan. And that was one of the biggest concern of like, okay, you guys are gone and we're running the show, but yet, they're showing up and they're still walking through, and even the previous employees, would recognize them and go to them. It was because they had ran it for so long. They didn't have necessarily plan of what they were doing with it. I wish they would have been able to have Q5. Thank God eventually they bought real estate in Florida. That was the best thing that ever happened to us because it kept them away for a while. And then the trust of us doing things, but there was never a plan for that to happen. It just organically happened with, and had positive outcome rather than consequences. But had they not bought real estate and been going to Florida, I don't know what it would have looked like going forward.
As a second generation, owner, how did you kind of navigate the tension between honoring the past and dad and everything else? And then you kind of want to shape some things on your own too.
That was hard because, and even to this day, I still want to honor what they built. I still want to keep, they didn't have a defined mission, but the goal of the organization and how we go about doing business, ethically and things like that. But the business has evolved dramatically. And the foresight to see, they always had worked on kind of a reactionary basis rather than a planning. That's probably been the biggest thing that I brought forward is like, okay, let's start preparing for what could happen rather than react. And they had great success and it was just coming to them without much effort. And I knew that couldn't happen forever. Eventually you had to work it. So the tensions, and I talked about, I lived at home. So, I'd come home and then at the dinner table, work didn't go away. It was every family engagement. It's still, even to this day, DMF Bait is the conversation at the family functions and how's it more, it's much more excitement behind it and how's it going. But where before it would lead into, we need to do this, we need to do that. No, you need to understand, I've been doing this longer. And it was really, really difficult. And again, I was young and naive, but at the same time, I could just sense there was a better way of doing things. But who am I to press it out and push it on? It was difficult. It was really difficult.
And that was the early 2000s when you were doing this whole transition. You couldn't have gone on your phone back then and said, Dad, watch this TikTok video or let's go on Claude or ChatGPT.
None of that.
There was none of that. So you kind of
none of that. So and I didn't have a peer group. I didn't have, like, now I look back at it, I've got a Vistage coach. I've got my team of Vistage. Chris is I lean on Chris quite a bit and other guys in the group. We've evolved into the EOS model. So we've got an implementer there that's helping us. I've kind of started to surround myself with other professionals. Didn't have that back then. I had my softball buddies. College roommates and things like that. Yeah. And again, when you're in your 20s, you're the smartest guy in the room. You know everything. You don't know anything. So it was really hard to even really seek advice or understand, am I going down the right path? Who am I to tell the guys that built this successful business that this isn't the right way to do something? That's hard. And when it's your dad, it's even more difficult.
Tell me this, Dan, was there a point or a moment, a signature moment you remember where you were like, all right, we can't continue to go down this path? And you don't obviously want to bash your family and the successors, but
there was one. We had an annual trade show called ICAST. It's the largest fishing trade show in the industry. And at the time it was in Las Vegas. And I had kind of mentioned our building wasn't big enough. We needed a bigger build. We needed more space. And then here we're in this transition of trying to buy them out. So they were exhausting all the capital at the time, but yet you need money to grow. And I'm like pushing, guys, we need to address space. This isn't going to work. And finally I outlined, because there was no plan for the future. I had put together, and again, no spreadsheets back then, all on paper. The past 5 years of growth and how much we've done and how much volume we've done. And we had at that one time, we had maybe, I forget how many square, 1,000, 5,000, in one truck well. And navigating, just scheduling the trucks for incoming products and outgoing products. And I said, if we grow for 5 more years, we can't physically do it. We have to start turning away business from only our existing. This is without new customers. This is just the customers we have. Their growth was exploding. I go, we really need to reinvent what we're doing and think this. And there happened to immediately a building next door became available. And I'm like, we need to buy this building next door. And it was, you're crazy. This is going to cost too much. I'm like, but it should, and I wasn't a finance guy to be able to make sense of it all. I just knew if we don't make this move, and it was, here we are, we're at breakfast. We were at oh my God, I forget the casino at the time. And I'm presenting this at breakfast. And they are like, you are young, you don't understand, we can make it work. I mean, the whole adage of, putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound bucket, we got really good at that. There's a point where it doesn't work anymore. And finally, when I laid it out on paper and I said, listen, you don't want to hear it, none of you want to believe it, but somebody's got to explain to me how we physically. And then after a while, the light bulb started to click, but it was, a lot of resistance. And that was kind of my moment, I think, for me, that was my shining moment of like, I got this, I understand it. I didn't just understand the numbers, the financial component behind it, but from an operational standpoint, it's kind of my moment of when I would recognize like there's, and at that point too, this company can be way more than it is today.
Can I swerve off the highway for a second?
Sure.
I know nothing about fishing. Okay. I am not a fisherman.
Okay.
So bait, it just came into my head when you were talking. So if I'm saying, okay, I'm going to take my son or my stepson or my daughter or whatever, family, how do I just need bait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I just call you? Like how do I get it?
So our product, we kind of broke the mold back in the day. There were bait shops everywhere when you and I were younger.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, they're gone. That was a generational
They've been replaced
gap.
by something else.
Well, they're replaced by the big box stores, basically.
Okay.
And so in '84, when we got into Kmart, never would have dreamt that bait shops would have gone away. Never really understood how impactful that decision is today because who knows where we'd be, because now we are in, obviously Kmart is gone, but we're in every Walmart store nationwide. We're in most Cabela's and Bass Pro stores, Dunham stores, basically all the big box. I forget Academy Sports down south, but locally here, Meijer, Bass Pro, Dunham's, Walmart. We're in all those, and we've now have our latest growth model has been in convenience stores. So a lot of gas stations, party stores, C store. That's our growth model now. So that's where you can find worms. And in those big box stores, they got a whole tackle section, so you can get your fish and pull.
Got it.
You can get all your basic needs, and that again, that's also part of our growth phase. Is we're going to start expanding beyond worms. We're going to start providing what we call worm-friendly tackle, hooks, bobbers, split shots, entry-level fishing poles, things like that. Those are going to start hitting convenience stores this spring, actually. And then, whether we go beyond, I don't know that we'll go direction big box, but there's a possibility big box down the future. But right now, live bait that's our bread and butter.
How are you feeling as an owner? You said you've got eight more years or so, you said earlier, but how's it going for you on a personal level? I love
it. It's a challenge. The way we've got our business structured, I'm able to kind of push the vision of the organization with expansion, focusing a lot on our culture. And again, now I told you about the whole building, we're in the same boat now. This many years later, we need another building.
Oh, no.
But this time we've got the support of because everyone sees it. Everybody's on path of where we're going. We're unified as a group. We've got a strong culture within the organization, and it's even our employees kind of pushing like, okay, when are we moving? What are we doing or expanding? We've got plans to either add on to our existing location or relocate. We're not quite sure there, but hopefully by the end of this year we'll have that. But yeah, I mean, I've got 8 years. My son just started working full time. He graduated 2 years ago, so he's now learning and he's at the basics. We're going to do it differently with him than it was with us. It's going to be a more gradual plan and strategic plan. Getting him to kind of master different parts of the business. And where before I had to know everything, you can't know everything. You should know all about your business,
Yeah.
but you can't be the master of everything. It's too much. And so we're finding his niche right now. He seems to be good with sales. But again, so he's hopefully generation 3 for us. Hopefully his journey starts in probably 8 to 10 years.
So owners, and I'm sure you'll tell me you're one of them. Owners have blind spots, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? What do you think?
Well, it's hard. In the past 2 years, really, I think a lot of us from our leadership team have kind of we've had a lot of personal growth, recognizing our strengths and weaknesses and being able to admit to them. Spent a lot of time just trying to fight through. I am a horrible organizer. I am a horrible with follow through. That's not my strong suit. So I've over years I've worked out my, relying on my calendar better and things like that. But now I'm able to focus more on big picture things. I've stepped more out of the day to day operations of the business and focusing on the relationships that help us grow. I work with all our bigger customers. I touch all the different main people within the organizations, checking in on them and focusing on our culture. And right now, my baby is where we're going next. Where are we putting our square feet next?
Yeah.
That's the big one. That's the one that's keeping me up at night right now.
Well, why? I mean, is it just a challenge because of the success that you've had? And obviously you've built out to 49 states, but what you said keeps you up at night. So what are you thinking about?
Well, one, it's a lot more expensive than we thought, and prices have only gone up quite a bit. And like, oh God, we should have pulled the trigger a couple of years ago on a few things. Understanding really what we need. We thought a couple times this is what we need, and think I'm glad we didn't pull the trigger because our vision, our growth, our opportunities have expanded. We have a very strong tie to our community too in Waterford. So ultimately our goal is to stay within Waterford, not looking like that's going to be. So it's been exhausting that options, but, exploring, adding on, we have some physical property constraints and things like that. So, ideally in our employees, I want to make sure that wherever we go, we can retain all our employees. There are buildings in Romulus and things like that. I'll lose everyone, and I don't want to lose anyone. We want to keep our people. We have spent the past 10, 15 years really establishing a great core, and we want to keep, we believe they're all happy, and I want to keep them happy.
I love that. How do you know? I mean, you said you meet with the leadership team, you're doing EOS. How key is it sometimes for you to even be walking around the building just checking in?
Well, they tease me quite a bit. I'm not in the back room as much as I used to be. My operations guy often says, let me teach you what we do here.
Oh, geez.
I've got a pulse of the organization. I've got a weird sense of I can feel when things are off. And a lot of it is I can hear the conversations, but I've let go of a lot of things too over the years. As we have gone into the EOS model, passing down ownership of things, it's been relieving. We've got a few more guys that still need to buy into that. And we have our weekly L10 meetings. I get in the back room a little bit, but I still have conversations with a lot of the managers. I'm more on the administrative side of things than the operational side of things.
It's interesting as a second generation owner because that's a tough dance. Mm-hmm. And here you are now, you mentioned your son. So, do you have to stop and pause sometimes? Like, I don't want to do things that happened in the past, even if it's just a conversation. Have you hit that point?
Yeah. And I've been reminded of that by my leadership team, like, stop living in the past, let us, because I'll be like, we did that once, let's not do it again. All right. We're smarter now. We've got AI. We've got all these new things we didn't have before. I have to sometimes let go of the failures of the past from keeping us moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I think there's been a ton of growing on my part of recognizing, I'm really trying to do a better job of not interfering. I used to butt in on a lot of things and interject. That's been hard. That's still hard for me. Um, but it's also important to make sure you're sharing and getting the opinions and advice needs to be passed. So I've got to be more. I've been more choosy about it. And it's the same thing. That's kind of the things that I'm teaching my son a little bit of, like, okay, being the mental preparedness for it more than the physical preparedness for it. Like, it's really how to start seeing things, and when do you step in, when do you not step in.
Well, you mentioned before your Vistage group. What's the tone of what are the topics? What are you hearing other owners talking about here in 2026 in terms of what they're going through right now?
It's amazing because our entire group, by design, Vistage is made up of business leaders of different industries. So we're never in a compatible or a competition standpoint. But oftentimes we have the same problems. It's really remarkable that no matter what product you're selling, you usually have a cultural problem with your organization. You've got a hiring problem. You've got a firing problem. You've got right person, right seat issue. I lean on the group quite a bit. I mean, we talk about battling suppliers on costs, handling supply chain issues, but so right now I think we're all faced with mammoth price increases. Right? I mean, the amount of this week our largest supplier came increases, and we've had a very good relationship with them, but we've had to have a gut check of, okay, it's not business as usual anymore. And unfortunately, we don't see an end in sight. And in our industry, passing in the increase onto the customer is very difficult. We did a very small, modest one last year, but never did we envision the increases we're getting now. So we get squeezed in the middle. And then at that point, we have to start making some other decisions. And I'm sure, within our group, we're all dealing with that. And especially when you want to grow, when you're growing, you're investing back into the business. So the margins are cut a little bit there too. So it's like, but we don't want to stop the growth.
Of course not.
We don't want to stop the growth. So I would say probably the number one thing we're all dealing with is the supply chain cost increases.
How big is the team, by the way?
Of my Vistage?
Yeah. No, of your company.
So my leadership team is made up of 6 of us. The entire organization, we've got 65 full-time. We're seasonal operation, and we're ramping up right now. We'll be at peak in the next 30 days. We'll have about anywhere from 90 to 100 employees.
At a bait company. See,
at a bait company.
That's why you're here. I'm fascinated by that. When was it at the lowest point in terms of when you guys, obviously when your father started it in 77 with his brother, but
yeah, how
did the growth go?
And I don't remember head count back then. Yeah. There was probably 20 maybe back then. I honestly don't remember. Back when the way we used to pack, there's probably 20 people. When they were getting in the early 80s.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Testament to you, Dan. It really is. That's fantastic stuff. And I love the story. It's awesome.
It's a fun story. And that's, what, for me, I'm energized even in our worst days. Like, our industry is kind of fun. And, I always joke with our employees, like, we deal with worms. So, part of our culture is, to be DMF proud, family, fun, and strive for improvement. And we need to get to work and we need to be at work. But if you can't have fun and joke when you're dealing with worms, you're in the wrong building.
Well, there's some sort of pun or play on words with worms and core values. It's got to be something in there.
Well, we have our company tagline, which is "Our worms catch fish or die trying."
Okay,
so
I like that.
We've got our internal mottos. Again, it's DMF proud, family, fun, and strive for improvement.
I love it. I love that. And we move heaven and earthworms to get the live bait you need, which is on the website. I cheated before. I had to do some pod prep here, but I had to get that in.
No problem. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
Awesome story and continued success.
All right. Appreciate it.
You got it.
All right.
There he is, Dan Beaudoin with us. DMF Bait Company since 1977 in 49 states. Matt Derry with you. Again, this has been another episode of the Freedom First Pathway podcast. ffpathway.com, wherever you get your podcasts as well. And remember, with FFP, we want to help you on a journey to discover what is possible for you.